Are audiobooks cheating? Kind of. To be completely honest, I think that assigning morality to something like audiobooks isn't something that we should necessarily engage in. We shouldn't say that audiobooks are cheating or not cheating. We should be more focused on whether or not the experience of listening to an audiobook is going to be beneficial for us in the way that we think or feel that it is. That being said, I do think there is a way in which audiobooks can be considered cheating. You could be cheating yourself of the message and the actual content of the author's work if you consume it as an audiobook. But I also think it depends somewhat on the book that you're actually reading. I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle on audiobook, and I really didn't connect with the material in the way that I know that I would have if I actually had a paperback copy of the book. Although listening to the book on audio kind of gave me a good feeling, and maybe while I was actually listening to it, I felt that I was actually connecting with being more conscious of the things around me. In the long run, I couldn't tell you a single thing that Eckhart Tolle actually thinks about consciousness other than the past and future are an illusion and the only time is now. That's literally the only thing that I can share of my experience reading that book. That being said, I do wonder if there's something to be said for the idea of programming your subconscious through listening to audiobooks, even if you aren't necessarily paying the most acute attention to the things that you're listening to. I wonder if by listening to the audiobooks that you're programming your subconscious and actually getting something out of it. Maybe there's something to that, but I know for a fact if I read the book, I would have gotten a lot more out of it. So I recently read a book called How to Read a Book, and I took a lot away from it. In the book, Mortimer Adler basically says that the books that we read should be consumed differently. Philosophy is a type of literature that we should read slowly, spending time on each of the lines in the book and actually trying to understand its deeper implications. Not to project here, but I have a strong feeling that Eckhart Tolle didn't intend for The Power of Now to be consumed at 3 times speed on audio while driving through a McDonald's drive-thru. Listening to the audio version of specific books is in essence cheating. That being said, I do think that there are certain books that are well adapted to be consumed in audio form. The way that we consume audiobooks is quickly and without paying a ton of attention to the contents. And there's some books that are actually suited for this. For example, fun, modern adventure books are meant to be consumed as quickly as possible. And it doesn't matter if you catch every single detail in the book. You might enjoy the book even more if you read it in extreme detail, but you can get a lot of the benefit out of reading a fun book by just listening to it on audio. I think in general, fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and adventure are great candidates for books that are actually pretty well suited for the audio format. I might catch a little flack for this, but I would also put biographies in the same category. I think when you're reading a biography, the most important thing that you're getting out of it is the general principles that the person is applying in their lives and how that transpired to the different experiences that they went through. 2 audiobooks that I recently consumed that I think made for great candidates as audiobooks are The Way of King by Brandon Sanderson. Now this thing is huge. It's like a 30-hour audiobook. I am personally not motivated to read a fantasy book that's 600 pages and let that take away from my regular nonfiction reading, but listening to it as an escape when I'm on my commute is a great way to actually consume fantasy. The other audiobook that I read was Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson, which being a biography, I feel like the most important thing again is understanding the values and principles that the person carried into their lives and how that transpired to the different experiences they have. But I also think that there's something awesome actually listening to the person's voice, who the story is about. Like listening to Richard Branson recount his experiences by reading his book was tremendous. I think there's 2 other things that you should do when you're listening to audiobooks if you're looking to get more out of it. Take notes when you're reading audiobooks. So something that I recommend that you do is you start a notes page in Notion or some other app, and you can even use your speech-to-text function on your phone, so then you can quickly get down your ideas on the message that the author is saying within the book. And then I highly recommend that you re-listen to the audiobooks that you thoroughly enjoy. So a dirty little secret is that my favorite book of all time, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear, I've never actually read a physical copy of. I've only consumed it in audio form, but I listened to it 3 times back to back to back because it was so good. And because I've listened to it so many times, I feel like I've actually understood the book in the same way that I would have if I read a physical copy. So there you have it. Are audiobooks actually cheating? kind of. But I think that if you go into them with the right intention and you're consuming the correct material through audio, you can actually get a lot of the benefit out of actually listening to audiobooks as opposed to reading them. I also think that if audiobooks are something that you can more consistently consume than regular books, then go nuts with the audiobooks. Listen to as many audiobooks as you can, because ultimately listening to audiobooks is going to be better than reading no books. But if it's going to be either one or the other, a lot of books would be better off consumed in their written form.